Come on a 33, Mom, Mommy and me, round all the shops we did roam. We spent and we spent, till our cards got bent. I feel so fed up, I wanna go home. The Glasgow rain is falling down, cleaning up the streets again. Now it's easing off a bit, but it'll come in sheets again. Why can't the weather get itself together? Seems like the rain's been falling forever. Fog is rolling up the Clyde, it's getting hard to see again. All the buses will run slow, I'll be late for my tea again. Why can't the weather get itself together? Seems like the fog's been rolling forever. When I was a kid there could be sunshine. When I was a kid it could be warm. Nowadays it seems like we've been lucky. Any day that goes without a storm. Comedians, they all feel sad, since Hancock took the hard way out. Milligan kept going mad, Charlie Drake got knocked about. Lots of funny spellers think on Peter Sellers. A heart attack for every wife. Bye-bye Barbarella. When I was a kid there could be sunshine. When I was a kid it could be warm. Nowadays it seems like we've been lucky. Any day that goes without a storm. The snow is falling on the roof, the streets are full of ice again. The country's going to the dogs, we're as poor as mice again. Now or never, time to get together. Seems like we'll be falling forever.
More words have been written about the Gorbals area of Glasgow than any other in the city. From the novel No Means City, set in the Gorbals tenements of the 1920s and 30s and reputed to be based on gang warfare in Glasgow at that time, to the autobiographies of the rich and famous who hailed from this much maligned part of the city. And strangely for such a well-known area, the Gorbals as a district does not now officially exist, at least on the electoral maps. According to historians, the first mention of the Gorbals as a name appears in the 13th century, and it would be little more than a small cluster of huts beside the River Clyde surrounded by moorland. The old village of Gorbals was known as Brigend or Bridgend until the 18th century, but any kind of rapid population growth and extensive building on adjacent lands did not happen until the 19th century. Originally the Gorbals was a small village with one street called appropriately Main Street, which was eventually changed to Gorbals Street, a name it retains now. However, over time the original village was cleared and the areas of land to the east and west of the village main street, known as Lauriston and Hutchison Town, were built upon, and this ultimately created a greater Gorbals area, although it was never known as that. And while Hutchison Town stretched beyond Crown Street, to most people who lived there, the Gorbals as a district stretched from Crown Street in the east to Eglinton Street in the west, which explains why Gorbals Cross became the unofficial centre of the area, a title it no longer holds. Modern Gorbals is still made up of the Lauriston and Hutchison Town districts, but the name Gorbals has been removed, at least from the electoral map, and in 1999 the City Council had split the Gorbals area between 3 local wards, these being Hutchison Town, Kingston and Tory Glen. But to everyone who knows it, the Gorbals still stretches from Eglinton Street in the west, but now to the banks of the River Clyde in the east on the border with Bridgeton. However much boundaries and official titles may change, the entire area still retains the name Gorbals. While there have been numerous histories written about the Gorbals, they have tended to concentrate upon the gangsters, millionaires, celebrities and politicians who hailed from the so-called notorious area of Glasgow. This film is not about that. Instead, we take a look at the Gorbals from the people's point of view. The majority of people never knew the gangsters or the millionaires, and their lives barely touched the celebrities and politicians. What people remember about the Gorbals are the streets where they lived and the characters that inhabited their streets. They remember the colour, humour, drama and tragedy of everyday life. Husbands and wives, boys and girls, shopkeepers and midwives, coalmen and ragmen. Stories from the steamy and the pawn shop, the cinemas and the theatres, the bookies and the bars. Home life, working life and social life in an area of rich and poor, with one of the widest cultural and religious groupings ever concentrated in such a small area. But the Gorbals is not a big place. In the 30s, 90,000 people crammed into its small acreage. In the 90s, only around 10,000 souls inhabit the same living area, which gives a stark example of the overcrowded living conditions of the past. Between the 1950s and the 1980s, the Gorbals was flattened by the bulldozers, as the old tenements bit the dust and a vast exodus of people took place. Many made their way to the new housing schemes such as Castlemilk, a vast housing scheme on the southeast of the city, and many more scattered further afield. There are regular visitors to the Gorbals from the USA, Canada, South Africa and Australia, many of whom are the children or grandchildren of original inhabitants. If they stored in their heads tales from a granny of the old tenements, the reality of modern Gorbals would disappoint them. The tenements, like the old grannies, are gone, but unfortunately the old stories of poverty, bad housing and unemployment still ring true in the modern version of Gorbals, despite a renewed effort to regenerate this ancient borough. While the Gorbals may still be poor in terms of economic wealth, it can still boast a friendly and resilient community full of humour and determined to survive whatever life throws at them. While the politicians talk about the Gorbals in terms of a new urban village that mixes new homeowners with existing council and housing association tenants, all the inhabitants want is employment and decent housing, within which to bring their families up. Buildings and streets may change, but some things never do. The beginning of the end of the old Gorbals began in the 1950s, and it is this era where our people's history begins, and in some way ends. The Gorbals buildings and characters began to disappear then, and while it took another 30 years before the last of the old buildings disappeared, the exodus of people began then, and saw the beginning of the end of an era and a way of life.
I was young in a slum, but I never knew bad times. To me, every day was a summer holiday pastime. I lived in crumbling tenements and splashed in backcourt puddles, and waked in ash-filled middens with the hope of secret treasures, and ran and screamed and shouted with belief, no doubt, that we were kings and queens in our kingdom without boundaries. And we dined on silver salvers, and we all lived in palaces. Hudgies and coal lorries and games and stanks with jories. And football was played in smooth tarmac streets, where a ball always burst that squashed when you would hoodie it. And lassies played ball on chalk-filled walls, and skipped in the closes as frost nipped at noses. See, brains could adapt and just made the best, even when the family was on a bloody means test.